Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to another Tnooz webinar produced on this occasion in conjunction with Travelport. Thank you very much, Travelport, as always. You've done many of these with us over the years. We have picked a really hot topic for you this afternoon, redefining airline retail sales for agents and planners. Now, so the preamble here for everybody is, what is the best way to sell consumers and business travelers the airline experience? Question mark. Where do the best sales techniques intersect with the most efficient merchandising tools? And furthermore, really, how can agents, corporate travel planners and other travel buyers really learn more about some of the newest airline merchandising technology kicking about now? Obviously, this all comes against this wonderful backdrop, at least from our perspective as Tnooz as a media company, because we have IATA that has been wading in with its size 12 boots over the last year or so, talking about the new distribution capability project, and it's certainly given us lots to write about. It's certainly given organisations like Travelport lots to think about, and also airlines in the shape of EasyJet, for example, lots to think about as well. So what we're going to do over the next 55-60 minutes or so is really have a deep dive, as they say, into some of the issues that have come about as a result of this, and what organisations such as Travelport and indeed their partners in the shape of EasyJet are doing in the merchandising world. So what we hope you'll learn over the next, as I say, 55 minutes or so is some of the background, what airlines are doing, and also what a company like Travelport is doing. Now, I'm obviously delighted to introduce myself. Of course, I can be humble sometimes, but I'm here today in Connecticut, unusually, and I'm sat alongside Jean Quinn, who's my co-founder and the CEO of Tnooz, who's our glamorous producer for today's webinar. So we're actually here in Connecticut, and I'm also joined by Derek Sharp, who's the Managing Director for Global Distribution Sales and Services at Travelport. He's in Dallas, Texas with us today, and I'm also joined by Andy Hodges, or Andrew Hodges if you're being formal, who's the Director of Sales, Distribution and Business at EasyJet. He's in Luton in the UK, where EasyJet is based. Right, so a little bit of housekeeping first of all. Please don't worry if you have to dip out on any occasion. We are recording the entire thing for you today, so we hope to get the recording and indeed every slide that you will see over the course of the webinar up on Tnooz within, we hope usually within the next 24 hours or so, and you'll be sent a link to that as well. So please feel free to watch again at your leisure, or forward on to your colleagues and your partners. We will have two presentations, one from Travelport, one from EasyJet, and at the end of that we will have what we hope will be a very robust question and answer session, so everyone can get involved in that. We're not mad enough to make that as an open mic session, but what you can do is to send in your questions using the dashboard on the right hand side, which has the title questions. So just simply send in your questions to me, and what we'll do is we'll get those together, and then we'll do a small little Q&A panel at the end of it. So please make sure you send your questions in. And as always, we like to take a temperature check of what people are thinking in the audience by inserting a series of polls throughout. So just to get you familiarised with the polling system, if you would like to answer the first poll question that's just about to come up on your screen, which is as follows. I hope it's very simple for you all, and it's: where are you located? Are you in North America? Are you in EMEA? Are you in Asia Pacific? Or are you in Latin America today? So please, if you can just quickly select one of those options. I can see you're all voting there. Okie doke. So just over half of you in North America, with Jean, Derek and I today. Just over a third in Europe, Middle East and Africa. Latin America 4%, and no real surprises, 6% Asia Pacific, given the lateness of the day over there. So thank you very much for that particular poll, and now we'll get down and do a proper poll. So let's have the second one there, please, Jean. Okay, so to what extent are airline customers looking for enhanced personalised services right now? Question mark. So are they, one, are they very interested? The middle one there, are they somewhat interested? Or indeed, are they still grieving over unbundled airline services? You have to excuse our flippancy on that one, but we thought it was quite a good option for people to have. So very interested, somewhat interested, still in grief mode. And if you would like to select one of those options, just watching those come in. Thank you very much. Okay, Jean, let's have those results up there, please. So, just over a third are very interested. I don't know if that's surprising or not. Maybe our panelists will address that later on. 43% somewhat interested, and unfortunately there are those that are still offloading buckets of tears. They're grieving over unbundled airline services, 23% of you. So we hope that what you're about to hear over the rest of the webinar will either inspire you and your customers when you're talking to them. But thank you very much everybody for the polls. And I mean, really, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Derek Sharp, who's, as I said earlier, is in Dallas. He's from Travelport, and he's going to give us a kind of an overview about the issues and indeed what Travelport is doing. So good morning to you in Texas, Derek, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the time. My goal today is going to be just to share a few introductory thoughts on the first few slides around some of the industry trends that we see and that have kind of colored our strategy at Travelport around how we think about merchandising and retailing in the airline space, and then talk in some detail around some of the offerings that we have in our merchandising platform. So with that, Jean, if you could go to the next slide. A lot of facts and figures here. I think the key message is all airlines are looking to drive improved revenue and profitability, but they're doing it different ways, and that's something we have to take into consideration as we're looking at how we think about merchandising. So a couple of examples to point out here, different models people are using. If you look at Etihad versus Emirates, for example, with Etihad, you've got a number of different JVs and partnerships, at times equity alliances that they've formed that are driving a big part of the growth strategy. Most recent example being a deal that they signed with Korean Air, which brings their total number of codeshare partnerships up to 46. That's a very distinct direction that they're taking in terms of market growth. Compare that against Emirates, a key competitor in that market, where they're more focused on building up the fleet and a number of routes as it tries to turn Dubai into a long-haul travel hub and win over passengers from European cities. So Emirates is already in the top 10 in terms of passenger numbers worldwide, but they've already announced 9 new routes just this year, including Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, and Barcelona. So different ways to grow even in the same region. If you look at ancillaries then and think about how airlines are approaching that opportunity, there are many different ways that they're approaching that as well. Delta Airlines, for example, has rolled out economy comfort through Travelport worldwide, and that's a big part of their strategy is growth in ancillaries throughout the entire network. Compare that against a low-cost carrier like Spirit, who's decided to charge an additional fee of $45 for any bags placed in an overhead bin, but at the same time, they're lowering their fees for check bag for frequent flyers. So different ways to try to go after that ancillary revenue. And if you think about what the airlines are doing in terms of investment, BA, for example, is spending £900 a year on new interiors for the A380s and 787. And for that investment, not to mention the cost of the aircraft itself, they really want to make sure that the agents have the opportunity to sell that value, that they understand the configuration and that next generation interior and comfort to the consumers. And then speaking of the consumers, they want to be recognized. At the end of the day, they want the airlines to understand who they are and what value they have, and some things as simple as frequent flyer numbers, but also different ways that they can be sold to throughout the whole network. And that's not even mentioning the low-cost angle in the market, where one of our statistics that we cite regularly is in the next couple of years, up to 50% of markets such as Japan even will be in the low-cost categories. Go to the next slide, Gene. So what does that mean when we're thinking about merchandising or thinking about ancillaries? Well, first of all, the low-cost carriers are going to impact the equation greatly going forward. If you look at the stats for growth in Europe for low-cost carriers as compared to the traditional network carriers. Also, if you look at kind of country by country or market dynamics, new players are causing established players to react differently. For example, Qantas is no longer the de facto domestic leader in Australia. Virgin Australia, by some calculations, has 51% of share. And that's going to change how Qantas thinks about their sales and revenue strategies going forward. But then to compete with new players, including the LCCs, all airlines have to think about how they have fast, flexible fares, offers, and schedules. So dynamic fare filing using API-based technologies is allowing some carriers, traditional carriers even, to run parallel business models, and this will work as long as the technologies work together in a seamless manner, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail going forward. But there's really two clear points that I wanted to make from this slide. First is ancillaries are vital to the overall business model. Travel agents themselves recognize this. Our research at Travelport shows that 85% of agents interviewed want the ability to sell ancillaries, and we also know this is true in the corporate travel space. 90% of corporate travel managers use travel agencies to manage business travel for their employees, and these travel managers want access to the travel content in an aggregated manner, and this was highlighted as a top priority in one of the recent studies we did with them. The second point on ancillaries is they're here to stay. So to Kevin's poll earlier, regardless of what the emotions are about it, the reality of it is it's a critical part of the business model. Ancillaries will drive revenues of over $45 billion for airlines by 2015. And if you think about how tight airline margins are, you realize how critical that is to the overall success of the industry. And the importance of ancillaries is even being recognized in some very heavily regulated areas. An example very recently being India's announcement in May that the Indian airfare structures are going to be brought in line with most of the world. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation announced that they're allowing carriers to unbundle their fares and services. I think this is just a sign of things to come. Gene, if you can go to the next slide. If we look on the travel agent side of the equation, though, while ancillaries are critical, the reality of it is selling them at times today is complex, and it's hard to know at times what an airline is offering in terms of optional services, on what routes, and for what price. And an example that we cite pretty regularly is bags and policies around bags. It's different by airline. A bag can be 23 kilograms on BA, but up to 30 on Etihad. Seats are different as well. We talk about a seat as an economy comfort seat, but what does that mean? Is that 4 inches more legroom, 6 inches more? How much more recline? And then if you think about the value that the airlines are trying to create investments in their product, they want to make sure they're getting that investment communicated effectively across all channels. So if you look at the picture on the far right, that's the inside of a new KLM plane where they're going to be unveiling a fully flat business class seat. And so if the airlines are making this investment in ancillaries and they understand how important it is for their growth, the important thing for us is, we as a travel technology provider have to enable the airlines to offer those ancillaries and pursue their various growth strategies across all of their channels. So having a multi-channel approach to merchandising is a key part of the Travelport merchandising platform strategy. It's really how do we help airlines retail and market their brand their way, so providing that choice for airlines and enabling them to distribute through the indirect channels very much in the same way that they do through their direct channels and website today. And then to the agency community, it's about providing unrivaled content and doing it in their workflow, in their way, and helping them get access to those ancillaries and understand what's there so that they can be effective. Next slide. So the key for us is that airlines have choice and that we're taking technology off the table in terms of restrictions. If you look at the top left box on this slide, this is representative of the .com environment for the airline, and when they deliver products through their own website, they have flexibility to manage the delivery and the intricacies of various offerings and to act more like retailers. If you look at the bottom left blue box, the level of dynamic control through this industry standards model is less obvious. There is less flexibility, but it is delivered to scale, and so those standards provide serve a very valuable purpose. According to IATA statistics, 60% of airline tickets by value are sold through the agency network, and they've allowed agents to manage complex itineraries and for the airlines to interline and so forth. So there's value in both sides of the equation, The important thing for us is we want to bring the value of both of those elements to the airline and to the agency community seamlessly. So if you look at the API line to Travelport box there, what's somewhat revolutionary and unique to us is that we're now able to give airlines the control and the retailing capacity through either channel, and including the lower left-hand box on the in areas where they traditionally have had less control in indirect channels. Now, an API and web-based data transfers in and of themselves not that new, but they allow airlines to communicate to a GDS like Travelport in a way that's very similar to what they do through the web environment. And the important thing for us is that it's merged seamlessly for the agency, that they're seeing the value on both sides of the equation, and they're not having to go back and forth to different systems. And for the consumer, they get the experience and consistency across all channels through the agent, and that they recognize that the interaction that they're having through the website is very consistent with what they're getting from their travel agent. So in essence, we're allowing the airlines to become a multi-channel retailer. So what does that mean in detail? If we go to the next slide, Gene. There's three elements to the Travelport merchandising platform. The first is what we call Travelport aggregated shopping. And the key points here are around flexible connectivity. So airlines can distribute through industry standards, through an API or a hybrid, with all the content shown in a single display. This meets the traveler demand in respect of either regional or low-cost airlines, so being able to show that content alongside a network carrier. It also enables agents to shop for LCC and traditional airline content on the same screen and in their normal workflow using the same commands. So there's efficiencies that are brought to the system there. It also enables price comparisons across all airlines, which is a critical part of the industry dynamic that Travelport supports, which is allowing consumers to see the best that the airlines offer in terms of both product and price in an easily accessible manner. And finally, it provides enhanced content as it enables the LCCs to distribute their content through an API, which has not been the case traditionally in the GDS model. The second element of the Travelport merchandising platform is ancillary services. So once again, Travelport's technology enables airlines to easily distribute ancillaries however they choose, either through ATPCO or an API, making more content available to the agent and to the end customer. The airline ancillaries are delivered to all points of sale and are seamlessly integrated within the agent's normal workflow. And this is important also because it'll start to allow airlines to drive more customer-centric selling with personalized ancillary offers, such as a free bag or seat to a gold frequent flyer. It's that kind of recognition that we mentioned earlier that customers are looking for. And there's no need to look outside the GDS to offer a full range of products and services from the airlines. Our Travelport technology enables them to distribute their ancillaries, making all that content available to the full agency community. And then the last element of the Travelport merchandising platform is rich content and branding. And this enables airlines to consistently brand and market themselves, their product and sales messages that they've spent so much time kind of developing and refining on their websites. We're able to take that same level of content and messaging into the GDS environment and provide rich information at the point of sale with images and sales information, ensuring the agent is able to confidently sell the airline's products. This is especially important in away markets where the agents may be much less familiar with a home airline's content, and especially as new products are coming out. You want those agents worldwide to really be able to sell the value, whether it's a la carte or the value bundled into the price of a ticket. And at the end of the day, the end consumer receives consistent content, branding, and positioning across all channels, which we think is critical in a retailing experience. And we can get down to whatever level of detail the airline wants to in terms of the airline content on the particular flight, highlighting all the services, both those that are bundled into the price and those that are paid for on an a la carte manner. And ultimately, it enables agents to easily assimilate and quickly compare different airline offerings. So as an example, if you go to the next slide, we'll look at a screenshot for aggregated shopping. And this is an example of a flight from Manchester International to Copenhagen. And here we have low-cost carriers alongside full-service carriers, all in the same workflow for the agent. no jumping in and out of different systems, no requirement to go to a .com site or broken workflow. It's easy to see the options there between EasyJet, SAS, KLM, and Swiss, and the YY marker there indicates that there are actually multiple carriers at that price point. If we go to the next slide, we'll look at ancillary services and what you can see through the system today. This is where on the left-hand side you can see ancillaries and optional services, once again integrated into the workflow for the agent. Here is an example as we have baggage and sports equipment for EasyJet. And then on the right-hand side, you see the ability to choose seats through a seat map. And once again, all the ancillaries and the seating capabilities are all bookable in that workflow through Travelport. If we go to the next slide, you'll see the future, though, of where we're going, and you see the dramatic difference between the traditional green screen environment and what we see coming up through rich content. This is an example through our SmartPoint point of sale, and this is where by clicking onto specific details within the green screen, you're able to draw up details and images around the product that's being offered. And here you can see the dramatic difference in the level of detail and the branding that's available to an airline around that specific offering, around that specific service or route. And once again, we can get as detailed as the airline wants in terms of representing both what's built into the fare and also additional services they may want to sell on an a la carte basis. So those are the three elements of the Travelport merchandising platform. If you go to the next slide, you'll see examples of customers that we're already up and running with on one or more elements of the Travelport merchandising platform. And that's an important part of our message today is this is not a strategy that is something that we're looking to do far in the future. Travelport Aggregated Shop is out there today. Your ancillaries can be sold efficiently and effectively through the green screen environment today, and the rich content examples that you saw around SmartPoint are on our product roadmap in this calendar year. And so these are things that we're working with some of our great partner airlines already in terms of bags, seats, or aggregated shop, and where with examples like EasyJet, which we always put forward as one of our best examples of alignment in the strategy of where they want to go with merchandising and what we're trying to do from a technology and product perspective. We've got some early adopters here that are really helping us refine our message and strategy and make sure that we're accommodating their plans and their strategies going forward. And that's why it's an honor for me to be here on the call today with Andy and to get to share this update on both where we are in terms of our strategy, but also what we're trying to do to help partners like EasyJet. So the final slide there, I think this is the last one in my section, is just a summary, if you will, of the overall strategy for our merchandising platform, and that is that we enable airlines to distribute their products their way and bring that value, once again, on both sides of the equation, whether it's from an API or industry standard perspective. And we do that in a way that allows the agents to get access to that content all in their normal workflow in as efficient a manner as possible. And we think that that's a strategy that differentiates Travelport, but that helps bring value to both our airline and our travel agency customers. That's it for my section. So with that, Kevin, back to you.
Thank you very much, Derek. Great overview there. Thank you very much for sharing some of the technology that you're doing. Interestingly, we've had quite a lot of questions come in already. Thank you very much to all of those that have sent in their questions, and we'll, like I said earlier, we will try and get to as many of those as we can towards the end during the Q&A. So thank you, and please feel free to send in some more. So let's have the third and final poll up on the screen there, Jean, please. And it is, which airline services will get the most traction among leisure and business travelers? So first one, in-flight services, financial services, like branded credit cards, that kind of thing, in-destination services, tours and activities, personalized loyalty services such as baggage coupons. So if you would like to cast your votes there. Okay, I can see you're all busily voting. And what I'll do is I will ask our next speaker to respond to the answer of this, which I'm seeing right in front of me. Jean, if you'd like to throw up the results of that poll. So just over a third, 68%, in-flight services, entertainment and seating. Just 4% for those next two, as you can see, and just under a quarter for personalised loyalty services. So lots to think about there, I think, possibly from the airline's perspective. And I think that gives me a nice little cue, if you can go to the next slide there, Jean, to introduce our second and final speaker, which is Andy Hodges, the Director of Sales, Distribution and Business at EasyJet in the UK. Andy, just quickly before you launch in, does those particular results surprise you at all?
Well, firstly, hello to everybody and good morning, afternoon and evening. I don't think that does surprise me. From our side, we certainly see the benefit of added value products and services, particularly the mention there of ability to select seats. That's certainly a product we've introduced to our portfolio over the last few months, and which we've seen a very positive response for. Thinking back to some of the slides which Derek shared earlier, certainly our ability to merchandise and sell those seats through all of our channels, not only our web but also critically through our key GDS partners, is something we're very keen to promote and see tremendous value coming from. So I think those results certainly chime with what we've been seeing and continue to see.
All right, sorry to kind of interrupt your flow there. I just wanted to get a very quick reaction to what you thought of the poll. So now I will hand officially over to you, Andy, and looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about EasyJet's experience around merchandising.
Thanks very much. Before we get into the slides, just a very quick introduction. I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of a catch up on where EasyJet is currently in terms of size of operation and activity. And then really for the balance of the slides, I wanted to focus on what we're trying to do to attract more business passengers to our network, and particularly touch on areas of how we're trying to enhance our product, critically some thoughts on our distribution strategy, how we're trying to get to market, and then finally how we're working increasingly with the trade through the channels that are relevant and right for them. So perhaps, Jean, if we can move to the first slide. So just a few key statistics in terms of where EasyJet is today. We've grown quite considerably in the 17-18 years that we've been operating here in Europe. Currently we're flying something in excess of 60 million passengers each year across our network. Just over 10 million of those are flying for business reasons. Probably you'll have noticed we've relatively recently entered the FTSE 100 here in the UK, which is a great testament to the hard work that the team have been putting in. We're flying our network now with in excess of 200 aircraft, more than 640 routes across Europe, and continuing to expand our footprint. Probably the most noticeable recent addition there was to add Moscow to our portfolio, which we now serve from London Gatwick and also from Manchester Airport. Jean, if we could move to the next slide. We've been working really hard to improve the quality of our network, so much so that we now lay claim to being the leading air travel provider across Europe. If you look at the top 100 routes that are flown across Europe by passenger density, we actually operate on more of those, 49, than any other airline operating across Europe. And that includes clearly the bigger legacy players such as IAG, Lufthansa, and Air France. Also on the bottom slide there, you can see just the extent and the breadth of the network. So these are figures that show the number of routes that fly from any one of these territories. So clearly the UK is where we have our biggest footprint, so 340 routes, but also you can see the quite significant expansion we've made into France, Italy, Spain, and many other countries across Europe. We've also recently added Bergen as a new service into the UK. Next slide, please. But having a great network isn't the only component to what we do. We've been working extremely hard with our operations teams to improve the punctuality of our flights. So much so that you can see there the movement in the rankings that we've made from previous financial year into financial year 12, up to an 89% on time performance within 15 minutes. There's been a very concerted effort across the airline to make that happen, with a very detailed program of work to reach that level of performance and also to maintain it. Next slide, please, Jean. I touched earlier on the introduction of allocated seating, and here are just a few other examples of further product enhancements that we've made. Allocated seating is working extremely well for us. It's something our customers have been asking for a long time, and we're very proud now to have delivered that. But we've also added other benefits into our portfolio. Relatively recently, we've introduced an ability for a mobile boarding card, which allows busy passengers on the move to have their itinerary and their schedule on the mobile phone and check through at a number of our airports. We're rolling this out now across our network. We've also relatively recently introduced fast track security for our Flexi customers, which again is another product which we've launched to appeal more to the business audience, and you can see there some of the other components which are included within that fare. Next slide, please, Jean. Not only though are we trying to improve both the network, the quality, punctuality, and the product offering, but also continuing to stay true to our heritage, which is to offer outstanding value. We have run a number of benchmarking surveys to see how our fares compare with those of a number of competitors. And here are just some examples. But we looked at actual itineraries of passengers traveling for business on our network and on the network of competitor airlines. And what we consistently see is the savings, the real savings, net savings that customers can make by choosing to fly an EasyJet. And we look to continue to offer that as part of our overall proposition. Jean, next slide, please. Our distribution strategy has moved quite a long way since we first launched. Originally, you probably recall pictures of our aircraft supporting our main contact center number. These were the days that predated the web. In those days, clearly we were a direct sell airline only, and although it seems alien to us here in the organization now, we at that point were very proud at trying to cut out the middlemen as we saw them and actively working to work away from the trade. And you see a little old ad that we had at that stage. Things have evolved a long way since then, not only with the advent of the web, which has proved enormously powerful for us as an organization, but also now into our current strategy, which is to have a multi-channel approach. And really the approach we take here is that to reach all of the audience that we're looking to offer our great products and great fares to, particularly and increasingly now to the business audience, we absolutely see the value and the benefit to us of extending our distribution to work very closely with our GDS partners and particularly with Travelport, but also to work with a range of self-booking tools to allow our product to be booked through mobile applications, and also clearly to work with the trade. Next slide, please, Jean. So here we've just listed a few of the key benefits that we see of working with the GDS. On our side, a core part of our strategy is to work much more closely with the trade to open up our network to high-yielding business passengers. We know that the GDS continues to be the preferred channel that the trade use to book and to manage corporate travel. And so it makes absolute sense for us to work with the GDS to make sure that our fares are displayed alongside those of all of our competitors, and critically to ensure that the full shopping functionality and booking processes in the GDS are the same now for EasyJet as they have been for many years for legacy airlines. And I guess one point to just draw out here is to highlight that because of our heritage and because we historically haven't been filing fares and working through the likes of ATPCO with a very rigid fare filing structure, it's taken a concerted effort with our GDS partners to allow our inventory to feature in the GDS in a way that's completely standardized with those of other traditional airlines. We see the work that Travelport and other GDS players are making as a key part of our journey of truly unlocking the opportunity that we see here in the managed travel part of the market. Those are the benefits on our side. Clearly, for corporates and for TMCs, working within the GDS allows for a much more efficient booking process, a standard flow and a standard way of working. We absolutely understand that it offers a much simpler way of managing bookings and keeping track of where employees and where clients are at any moment in time. But also, now that we are in the standard flow, particularly given the great work that the Travelport team have made, that it actually unlocks a huge amount of value and much easier access to the lower fares that we're able to offer to this this client base. Gene, the next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that a key part of our strategy is to work much more closely in a partnership with TMCs, but also with corporates. We have a sales team now across all of our main territories, and they're developing from a standard approach incentive agreements with our partners and offering a range now of products in the channels that work for each of those partners. And our goal here is to make corporate travel and business travel much more straightforward, much simpler, much easier, and critically much more affordable. And especially here in Europe at the moment, we find that message resonates very well, given the ongoing stresses across all of the economies in this part of the world. Gene, the next slide, please. So finally, just a summary of our approach to the corporate market. We absolutely recognise that the fundamental importance of a very, very strong network in terms of breadth of coverage and depth of frequency. As I mentioned before, we're flying more than 600 routes across Europe, more than 130 destinations, with a real focus on primary airports. We've worked very hard to improve and sustain a very strong record on punctuality. We've added to our product portfolio with the introduction of flexible tickets, things like allocated seating, and we have a very clear strategy to offer that great product and that great value across multiple channels, so critically the GDSs, self-booking tools, but also with our direct channel for those who prefer it on EasyJet.com. Which I think, Gene, brings me to the conclusion of my slide deck.
Okay, thank you very much. Great stuff from both Derek and Andy there. Inevitably, we've had really quite a lot of questions come in. So what we're going to do over the next 10-15 minutes is try and get through as many as we can. If we don't get to those questions, what we will do is make a record of them, and hopefully Andy or Derek will come back to you individually with some kind of answer. So to kick us off, I suppose it's the kind of there's two key questions that have come in, which I think we're going to start with, and feel free either Derek or Andy to jump in as quickly as you can. So Bob Offit, he of Focusrite fame, says, how do you compare airfares apples to apples when each airline offers a different suite of ancillaries? So let's go to you first on that one, please, Derek.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a reason once again why it's important for us to be able to show not only the comparison shopping that we showed in the aggregated shop and within the ancillaries, but also ultimately to be able to do that through rich content in more detail so you get the real product differentiation that the airline is looking to show. So what I can say is, the examples that we looked at today, where you saw the booking flow of booking that flight that we had as an example from Manchester to Copenhagen, you're able to go through within the booking flow and look at the fare price, and then once you select a route, go through and look at the ancillaries and what that builds up to for the total price before you actually purchase the ticket. And you could do that for multiple airlines in there if you chose to. Now, once again, in the green screen, you're looking at the price points and very limited product descriptions. But as we have the rich content coming online, you'll be able to see even more around the product details and differentiation beyond just the price points themselves.
Okay, do you have anything to add to that one, Andy, before we move on?
I think simply to say that from our point of view, we very much value our customers' ability to personalize what they would like to buy, whether it would be a seat only or to add to that with a range of other products. But we also are catering as a one-stop shop for those who would like to buy a fare that wraps a number of products together, particularly our flexi fare. And I second the points that Derek previously made.
Okay, so next question. Apologies if I mispronounce your surname, but Chetan Dulipala asks, Travelport is allowing airlines to sell their products, great, but how will airlines know their customer? Question mark.
I think the important thing for us is that, and once again, we give credit to the airlines for the fact they've done tremendous work on their airline.com sites in developing their messaging, their product, and ultimately getting more focused around the customer and kind of the specific offerings that customer might want. Through the travel agency channel, the critical thing for us is allow comparable level of detail around the products while allowing the travel agency to offer as detailed and as customer-centric an offer as the airline can provide. So will it be exactly the same experience as going through the .com environment? No. But through what we're doing with the Travelport merchandising platform, the airline will have the opportunity to make customized offers, more customer-centric offers than they have traditionally in kind of the legacy GDS environment.
Right, okay, so do you sense then, just as a follow-up on that one, do you sense then that people are a bit concerned that they may not be the ones who eventually own the customer, that it will always be back to the supplier rather than, thinking of the TMCs here and the leisure agents? Because, we hear this quite a lot, is that there is this worry that who eventually does own the customer, or is this a relationship that will actually just work over time?
I think it's an interesting question, Kevin, and I'll tell you from a Travelport perspective, we've given up debating who owns the customer. The customer is king. We want to provide him or her with the best value possible. We want to work with our airline customers to help them, as we said earlier, deliver their value message consistently across all channels, and we want to work with our travel agency customers to help them reflect that value and make sure that they're bringing the best of the airline into that booking process. any debate over who owns the customer is not something that we're going to get involved in.
Right, okay, so surprisingly only one person has asked, and she did beat me to this. This is Kathy Bridges, and she says very simply, can both EasyJet and Travelport give us their opinion on the current IATA NDC effort? And she asks, is it valuable to the industry? And we'll go to you first of all on that one, Andy, please.
So from our side, we're staying a little bit away from that debate. We have our own very clear strategy of trying to work across a number of channels. Our own .com site works very well for us, and we're very pleased with some of the progress we've been making working with the GDSs to bring to life the various ancillary products that we have already to offer. But beyond that, I don't think we have a position.
Okay, that's EasyJet doesn't have a position on NDC. Fair enough. Okay, so over to you, Derek, at Travelport. I know Travelport does have a position on this.
Sure, and we've made a couple of different public comments around specific concerns with what's been put forward to date in terms of proposals or resolutions. At a macro level, though, what I can tell you is Travelport is absolutely supportive of industry standards, and if you look at the work that IATA sponsored on things like e-tickets, for example, that was an effort that the entire industry benefited from by having common standards and a common view on how to handle specific interfaces. To the extent that NDC ends up being around that type of objective, I think that's something that's good for everyone. But to the extent that there are kind of challenges in the business model or technology or channel issues that IATA is trying to address through the NDC, all I would say is, I guess I'd point you back to the discussion so far today, which is we're out there doing a lot of the things today with our customers that IATA says they want to do years and years in the future. And tackling it at an industry level may have some benefits, but I can tell you that our focus is going to be on developing and delivering products and services today that help our airline and our agency customers win more business and be more competitive.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy Jameson asks, with regards to your remark, Andrew, that Travelport has implemented workarounds to EasyJet's lack of ATP code distribution, can you expand on this a little bit? What GDS features would traditionally require ATP code, but which are being emulated on behalf of EasyJet?
So these are not so much workarounds, but I was referring more to the new Travelport aggregated shopping functionality, which Derek was outlining in his pack. And the benefit to us of that is that it would standardize the way in which our inventory is shown, and also the booking flow that our inventory can be secured with.
And if I could jump in for a minute, Kevin, the one thing I would add too is I think we've heard from an industry perspective at times that people didn't think traditional, quote, low-cost carriers would want to be comparison shopped, that they're, whether they're unbundling or bundling ancillaries, that they don't want that level of transparency and comparison across different airlines. I give EasyJet a lot of credit, though, because I was at an industry event a few months ago presenting a version of what we've gone through today, and I had one of Andy's colleagues standing up next to me saying that EasyJet welcomes the comparison to any other airlines based on price or product differentiation because they're confident in the value of what they're selling. And I think that's the message that we want to get across in terms of what our technology is enabling and what our Travelport merchandising platform is all about, is how to allow airlines to put their best foot forward and to show the quality and value of their products in the best way possible, but to do that in a way that the consumer, the travel agency, and ultimately the end consumer gets to kind of look at that across the spectrum of what's out there among competing airlines and make an informed decision. And to us, it's a win-win, and I think EasyJet's maybe ahead of some of their competitors and seeing the upside there.
Okay, so let's do some quick-fire questions here from, I guess, the very specific ones. So Rehab Nasir asks, will EasyJet be available on WorldSpan?
Yes, we'll have availability across all the Travelport cores.
Okay, next one. Sorry, they're getting more coming in here, and I'm struggling to keep up with them. So, this is from Massis Kuradijan. I hope I've pronounced that right. Does EasyJet aim to include their services such as mobile card and track flexi in their API? Question mark.
So all of our product is available through our GDS partner, but particularly through Travelport and through our API connection. Yes.
Okay. Another question here from Mattis again. Does Travelport aim to return airline content through their XML APIs, or will it only be available through their cryptic APIs?
The goal, once again, is what we have out there today through aggregated shop and through our ancillary sales in the traditional green screen environment is the first step in the process, and so that's there today. The aim, though, is through our rich content initiative in that last piece of the Travelport merchandising platform value proposition is to allow that rich content to come through an XML interface, and to the extent that the airline wants to provide more detail around the product and service, that we enable that through our system, and that's coming literally in a matter of months.
Great stuff. Okay, last quick fire one from Dan Tierney at Mobile RQ. This is for Andy, he says. What is the vision of EasyJet for leveraging its mobile app for increasing revenue and enhancing customer service? So slightly off topic, but I think it's relevant in the grand scheme of things.
So we see mobile as a growing channel, which just is reflecting changes in general technology across society. And as I was outlining in my presentation, we're absolutely focused on making sure that our inventory is available across all channels that are relevant to all of our customer types. So whether that's through sort of managed channels, for example, such as the GDS, or whether it's through other channels, historically web, or increasingly now through mobile, as people either are using phone devices or also increasingly other devices too.
Okay, so Judy McKines, or McInnes, asks, does Andrew see low-cost carriers paying travel agents commission to sell those ancillary products if you're not already?
So we're working very closely with a number of corporate travel management companies, and absolutely we do have a number of incentive agreements with them. But I wouldn't clearly want to go into the details of commercially sensitive information on this particular.
No, that's fine. We'll save that for your earnings call whenever that's due. So let's kind of wrap up in the last couple of minutes here, guys. Someone was asking to you, Derek, at Travelport, who do you see as your kind of competitors over the next 3 to 4, 5 years? Do you think that marketplace is going to change given this kind of changing ecosystem around distribution?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I think the answer from our perspective is absolutely. We think the traditional GDS competitors are out there, and we think they will remain relevant for the foreseeable future, and so we have to make sure that we're putting out products and services that are competitive against theirs. But we absolutely see different technology companies especially that are coming in and innovating around whether it's the example we just talked about with mobile, whether it's around how to get new content into the ecosystem, where we have to be cognizant of where those fast, nimble startups are bringing new value and kind of changing the equation. But one of the ways that we're trying to deal with that is through what we call our Travelport Developer Network, where all of our technologies are being built on an open platform strategy and mantra. So if somebody's got a great widget that they think the travel agency community is going to want to take advantage of, or that we can add into our value proposition for the airline customers, we want to make that platform available for those developers to get access to as well, because we know there's lots of people out there with great ideas.
Yeah, and just as a kind of a loose follow-up to that, David Rosen asks here, how does a GDS such as Travelport get content, in other words, pricing and other services from these low-cost carriers that currently do not want to fully participate with them? Is that going to remain the kind of status quo? There are a number of low-cost carriers that do not want to participate, or do you see over time that they will see the benefits of beginning to work with the likes of Travelport?
I think there's a spectrum. I mean, you've got airlines all across the spectrum, ranging from maybe put Ryanair on the far end, where there's almost a religious dedication to being a direct channel focus, and that they're not going to move off that, to working down the spectrum, a number of low-cost carriers, especially maybe in Asia or Eastern Europe, that are growing fast with their own direct strategies. But the part that we think is important from a Travelport perspective, and why it's so critical that we get the merchandising platform out there and to scale, is we see so many low-cost airlines that as they mature, they hit a glass ceiling, if you will, in terms of growth, and they look across the business model, if you will, at the business travelers and what the travel agency network brings, and they want to figure out, how do I get access to that? And they're not necessarily going to change their business model to the extent where they're going to start filing fares through ATPCO or kind of moving into a traditional network carrier model. But more and more LCCs are coming to us and saying, we want to be able to get after that travel market, that business traveler market in a more efficient way, but to do it in, that fits with their model. And we think the Travelport merchandising platform absolutely accommodates that.
And finally, to you then, Andy. I mean, where do you sense that we'll be having these same kind of discussions in, say, 4 or 5 years' time, or do you think the wider marketplace will have evolved? Now, put a broader air industry hat on for a second, rather than just EasyJet. Where do you see all this?
So I think the world is beginning to move into the direction that EasyJet has begun to forge a path, in that much more focus on being able to have dynamic pricing, the ability to tailor ancillary offerings. Whether that will happen within the next 4 to 5 years, I rather doubt. I think the complexity and amount of change that needs to happen will mean that a similar debate may still be happening at that stage, but I think you'll see a growing trend of more nimble carriers being able to take advantage of some of this changing technology and hopefully serve their customers in a much more meaningful and relevant way.
Great stuff. Okay, so thank you very much to everybody that chimed in. Unfortunately, you haven't heard the dulcet tones of Jean Quinn this afternoon, who often joins us for the Q&A, simply because we've had so many questions come in. So just a reminder, those of you that did submit a question and we didn't get a chance to listen, to hear it get responded to by the panel, we have saved all these questions and we'll be passing those on to the panelists, and hopefully them or some of their representatives will get back to you in the next couple of days with an answer. So just a quick reminder then, everybody, we have recorded this entire thing for you this afternoon, and we hope to have that up on tnews.com in the next, like I said earlier, 24 hours or so. That will also include all the slides as well. So thank you very much to all of you that sent questions. Obviously, thank you for everybody for listening in. And finally, thank you to Andy Hodges at EasyJet, and most importantly, Derek Sharp at Travelport for not only being excellent panelists and their presentations, but obviously to Travelport for supporting this webinar. We do hope that you'll be listening into future discussions about this issues and reading them on Tnews over the weeks and months. It's certainly an issue that doesn't appear to be going away, but I think that we really have covered some of the issues here over the course of this webinar. So thank you very much to everybody for listening in. Enjoy enjoy the rest of your respective days. If you have long ones ahead of us like us here in the US, have a good day. Have a good evening, everybody else. Thanks ever so much. Good everybody, and goodbye.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.